Imagine an entire nation, over 170 million people, just holding its breath. After a year that's been a whirlwind of revolution, protest, and radical change, Bangladesh is staring down a moment that could literally define its future for decades.
And it all boils down to one huge question. How do you even begin to restart a democracy? I mean, think about it. After 15 long years under an increasingly authoritarian government, how does a country rebuild its democratic institutions basically from the ground up?
Because that's the reality facing up to 127 million eligible voters. And get this, for tens of millions of them, this will be the very first time they've ever had the chance to cast a ballot in a truly competitive election, one that isn't a foregone conclusion.
So, that day is February 12th, 2026, and let me be clear, this is not just another election, not by a long shot. It's being called the first credible national vote since way back in 2008. It's a genuine turning point for the whole nation.
So, what makes this vote so monumental? Well, it's because this isn't just an election. It's really the final step, the final chapter in a delicate political transition that started with a dramatic popular uprising.
On the day, voters are going to be making two massive decisions. The first ballot is pretty standard. You're voting for a new parliament. But the second one, that's a national referendum on something called the July Charter. And this is a package of sweeping constitutional reforms. So you see, voters aren't just choosing new leaders. They're being asked to approve a whole new system of government.
To really understand how we got here, we've got to jump in the time machine and go back to 2024 to look at the incredible events that became known as the July Revolution.
What's just wild is how quickly it all happened. It kicked off in June 2024 with student protests over job quotas. By July, though, it had exploded into a mass movement demanding the end of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's 15-year rule. The absolute tipping point came on August 5th when the army refused orders to fire on protesters. At that point, Hasina had no choice but to flee to India. And just 3 days later, Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus was sworn in to lead an interim government tasked with figuring out what came next. Talk about a whirlwind.
So this new interim government had a very clear mandate from the people on the streets. The message was loud and clear. Don't just hold another election, fix the entire system that allowed authoritarianism to grow in the first place.
Their mission was a complete root and branch overhaul of the state. To get it done, they set up 6 different reform commissions to tackle the core institutions, the Constitution, the courts, the police, everything that had propped up the old regime. All of that work led to one key document, the July Charter.
And this is what that second ballot, that referendum, is all about. The July Charter proposes fundamental changes, all designed to make sure no single party can ever get that powerful again. We're talking about reducing the Prime Minister's authority, creating a whole new upper house of parliament for more checks and balances, and making it way harder to change the Constitution on a whim. And crucially, it aims to bring back a neutral caretaker government, a temporary, non-political body to oversee future elections and just make sure they're free and fair. Now, all these reforms are happening at the same time as a political earthshake is shaking the country. The entire landscape has shifted, and because of that, the election of 2026 is going to look totally different from anything in the past. The single biggest change is this. Sheikh Hasina's Awami League, one of the 2 political giants of Bangladesh for decades, is not on the ballot. After huge protests in 2025 demanding accountability, the interim government banned its activities until trials at a special domestic court are complete. The Election Commission then suspended its registration, which effectively leaves millions of its supporters without their party.
So who's actually competing for power? Well, the race is really boiled down to 2 main groups. On one side, you have the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, or BNP. They're the Awami League's traditional rivals, and they're now led by Tariq Rahman, who recently returned to the country. On the other side is Jamaat Islami, the country's largest Islamist party. They've seen a major resurgence and are focusing their platform on social welfare and fighting corruption.
And just look at how tight this race is. Recent polls show the BNP was just a razor-thin lead over Jamaat. With the Awami League's massive voter base totally up for grabs, it is truly anyone's race. And that's something Bangladesh hasn't seen in a very, very long time.
Okay, so let's zoom out. Beyond the domestic race, the outcome of this election is going to have huge ripple effects across the entire region. We're talking about major geopolitical shifts and brand new challenges to stability. The most significant shift is in foreign policy. The Hasina government had an extremely close partnership with India, but the post-revolution mood has been all about moving away from what many people saw as Indian hegemony.
This has opened the door to warming ties with Pakistan, with direct trade and high-level visits resuming for the first time in decades.
Unsurprisingly, this has created some regional tension. India, a longtime ally of the Awami League, has publicly expressed its concern over the party's ban. They've highlighted what they're calling a shrinking political space in Bangladesh.
And this all brings us to what might be the single biggest challenge for any new government: reconciliation. The Awami League is a historic party with a massive base of support. It can't be kept out of politics forever. But after all the violence and repression of the past, figuring out if and how that party can be brought back into the fold, that's going to be a thorny and politically explosive issue for years to come.
So, as 127 million people get ready to vote, they face a historic choice. Will this election lock in the gains of their revolution and kick off an era of stable, democratic reform? Or will the deep divisions and all these unresolved questions ignite new and maybe even more dangerous conflicts? The answer is going to shape the destiny of Bangladesh.